Hello everybody, I'm Scott Poynton and welcome to another Cooee podcast. I recently travelled to the US Southeast where I met with forest industry people who work for or who are linked to TFT member Enviva. Enviva is the world's largest manufacturer of wood pellets. It's not without controversy. NGOs are concerned for the biodiversity of the southeastern forests, one of the world's major wood baskets. NGOs often paint brands like Enviva as villains, and yet the people who work for those brands are, from my experience, just like you and me, and more often than not, just like the people who work for the NGOs. They have the same hopes, the same aspirations, and often even the same fears. There is a rich potential for common ground and common understanding, if we could just sit down and listen to each other. I want to share the stories of some Enviva people, of forest industry people, human voices we seldom hear. In this podcast, we hear from Brad Antill, a forester motivated by his love for forests and his faith. I'm out in the forest and I'm with Brad Antill. And Brad is the Mid-Atlantic Regional Manager for Coastal Timberlands Company. So how are you, Brad?
I'm doing well.
Yeah, well, thanks for talking to us today.
Sure.
Yeah, no, well, I'm interested in what you're doing. We've come to the forest, one of the tracks where I visited last April. Seeing this particular site, I can see there's quite a lot of regeneration out there.
Before you came, I just walked out through there just doing some counts on regeneration, and it's averaging about 1,500 seedlings per acre.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that.
It's a good result. Okay, so look, tell us about yourself. How old are you?
56.
56, so you've been around a bit?
A little bit,
yeah.
I've been in the timber business for about 30 years.
Is that right? How did you come to get into this job?
Well, I went to Ohio State University and graduated with a forestry degree. Mm-hmm. That was back in the early 80s, and there wasn't a lot of stuff happening in the timber industry. Spent some time building houses, so I became a master carpenter and still wanted to try to put the degree to work someplace. So I started doing the old send out the resumes and follow them, and lo and behold, I wound up in southeastern North Carolina with a paper company called Federal Paperboard and a place called the Green Swamp. And the Green Swamp is the southern end of what used to be the Great Dismal Swamp. And
I had a great dismal beer the other night when I arrived.
Well, that's probably what they would have to drink after they were in the swamp too long.
Yeah.
But, it was a vast area of industrial timberland. So I was able to kind of cut my teeth, I guess you could say, working with the folks there in that company, trying to go back into some of the areas that were still just then being reached in terms of logging. So I've been fortunate that I basically started out in what is the beginning of the swamp logging, what we see today and we call swamp logging, the equipment that they use. A lot of that generated down in that part of the country, and I was able to, observe a lot of it and be involved in a lot of it. Right. And then from there, I came to Coastal 20 years ago.
20 years,
mm-hmm.
Okay, yep. And what about your family? You're married, kids?
Yep, married. I have two boys. They're both out of college now, and I've got 3 grandkids.
3 grandkids? Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
As of 2 weeks ago, the last grandchild came along. So
no mucking around.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. How long you been married?
Let's see, 36, going on 35 years, somewhere in there.
That's good. So childhood sweetheart?
Yes, we went to high school together.
Congratulations. Good on you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
33 years this fall. In case my wife hears
I was going to say.
I'm sitting here doing the math in my head.
I know, better get that right. What do your kids do? Are they working in the outdoors area as well? Or?
Well, I've got one who's a game warden for the state of North Carolina. Okay. And then my other son's a minister of music and youth at a church in the vicinity.
Okay. Oh, okay. What do you do in your spare time?
I'm not sure there is such a thing.
You don't have much?
Chasing after grandkids, and we're involved in a church ministry, so that takes a lot of our spare time. We work with youth. I'm also a wannabe writer. Now, I
was going to ask you about that. As we were coming down here, Don was told me, not are you only a wannabe, you've actually published a few books, I understand.
Yeah, I published 5 books.
5 books?
Yes, and those books are based on forestry, and my view of the Creator, how I see God in everything that I do, and particularly in the area of forestry, I mean, it's very much a love of mine, and it sort of combines my two loves, my love for God and my love for forestry. And the things that I see in my daily work is what I write and I share in a devotional style.
Good for you. Interesting. And, well, you might have just answered the next question, but I'm interested to know, what inspires you? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
What inspires me in the morning?
Well, just in your life, really.
Yeah. Well, I think in one, it's in serving what I believe God has put into my life. I mean, He's given me a love for forestry since I was in 8th grade, which is when I felt like I wanted to go into forestry.
What happened then? I mean, it's interesting because I asked this question because my own story, I wanted to be a vet when I was young. And
okay.
I listened, I was in Australia, lived in rural Australia, and I listened to this old guy on the radio. And an old forester who's travelling around the world, he spoke on the radio and it just captured me, absolutely captured me. And that was right, I'm going to be a forester. Did you have something like that in your life?
Well, for me growing up, I loved history. So I was always reading about the exploration of North America and all the fur trappers and the mountain men. And it was very romantic and I loved to read. And I had a lot of fishing magazines and hunting magazines that I would order. And I had this one magazine, and it had an ad in it for information about forestry, and it had a little, you could get a pamphlet, it was called. So I sent away to get this pamphlet to see what it was about, and it was entitled, So You Want to Be a Forester.
Right.
And
hadn't thought about it till that point.
Exactly. And from that, and the pamphlet, gave all the different, things that they did and that sort of thing. So as I got that pamphlet, I said, I want to be a forester. So that started in 8th grade, and I began collecting data on the different schools that offered the degrees and, the different avenues on trying to go about and approaching that. And it's just, it's a love that, God gave me when I was in 8th grade that I still have.
You still have. Are you from Ohio?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So was that hard to move down here from there, or?
Well, in a way it was because, you leave in family. It's always tough to leave family. My family and my wife's family, we all live in the same town. And like I said, we went to high school together. So, we had to leave that. But at the same time, forestry being my love, this is where the jobs were.
Right.
The Southeast was booming. It was one of the few places that you could really just, depend on a lot of work. So we came down with, put our foot in the water, see what we liked, and we fell in love with the area and have been here ever since.
Tell me, what gives you the most joy in life? I ask this question because I often think it's the things that give us the most joy and also perhaps the most hardship or most disappointment that really teach us a lot about ourselves and about life.
Well, I enjoy sharing my faith. Not only do I write, I also do a lot of speaking. So I speak at different events. I've been able to speak in churches. I teach classes. I really just enjoy taking what I see God doing in nature and then trying to share that with other people. Because what I found is that, we all have that opportunity to see God at work. We just very seldom do we look for it.
Right.
So I would say that probably motivates me as much as anything, and that is that idea of sharing what I see of God at work with other people.
Do you think that being a forester, I mean, we're standing here, we can see, the waste of the landing and the operation. Of course, a lot of people would look at this and say it's destruction and, death and destruction, and it's a terrible thing. But, I mean, you've just talked about the regeneration. This is regenerating. Do you think that this inspiration with nature is something that helps you work for a company where you're not just taking wood, you're not just buying wood and doing something, you're actually out in the forest to help bring regeneration, part of nature's cycle? Is that something that is important to you?
Yeah, because particularly with this site, interesting because I was reading about it this week. If you read the creation story, it starts with light, and then it separates the water, and then earth comes, and then you have trees. Well, that's exactly what happens in this particular cut. When this track was cut, it had to have sunlight. You had to have light on the forest floor. If you don't get that light on the forest floor, you're not going to get regeneration. You then have to remove the water. Seedlings don't just pop up in the water.
Right.
An inch of water will kill a tree. It won't grow. The seedling won't be able to handle it. So you got to bring in sunlight. You got to remove the water temporarily at some point. You got to get trees established on dry ground. Then once those trees reach a certain age, then the water can come back. And that's all a process. You can't circumvent it any place. You can't say, well, let's keep the water, but let's get the trees. Well, you can't do that.
No.
There's a process that has to go through, and that process is an orderly fashion. It's not random. And unfortunately, I think sometimes in society, we want to jump some of those steps. We say, well, we want to have a stand of cypress and tupelo 80 years from now. Well, 80 years from now, I'm going to have a fine one right here next to this truck.
Yeah.
And when I look out across that cutover, that's what I see.
Yeah.
I just see it younger.
Yeah, right.
I can go out and I can see the young cypress. I can see the tupelo popping up. And I know that nature is orderly, that, that's what's going to come out there. Yeah. There's a process. You can't jump it.
You can't short circuit it.
That's right.
Okay, so that's the greatest joy. What can you think of something that was your greatest disappointment in your life?
Disappointment was having to leave home.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that, to pursue one dream, I was going to have to give up something. We didn't lose family. I mean, we visit our family a lot and we're still extremely close, but having our family not be as important in our daily life as it would be if we still lived around them, we've had to adopt new family.
Right.
My kids have several grandparents, people who they've grown up around and who look at them as their grandkids.
Yeah. Very close community.
Yes. And that's always been a disappointment of mine that, my parents were not able to invest as much in my kids as if I lived down the road from them. But, I see it. That's what God wanted in my life. He wanted me down here, and so here I am.
Here you are. What about the future? What are your hopes and aspirations for the future?
Every day I take it, I have another day to work outside. I've got another day to do what I enjoy doing. I don't try not to take any of that for granted. Business is business. Companies come, companies go. Anytime you're working for a family operation, there's always a chance for change if the family decides to change things. But the land's not going away, not yet. So as I see the future, I say, well, today is what the Lord has made. And so, I'll live today and then start tomorrow.
See how you go tomorrow.
That's right.
Got anything you worry about for the future? We're talking to people about climate change, and there's a lot of tension in the world. The political tension seems to be getting up higher, and the dial keeps to be turning up. Got any things that worry you for your kids, or?
No, what worries me is, if my grandchildren have got a cold, or, what's going on in their lives. I don't necessarily sweat the future because I believe God holds that future. So He'll give us the wisdom to go through that future as that future unfolds and comes to us. Global warming and all those things I have opinions on, but it's not something that I lose any sleep over.
Do you think the forest industry that you're doing here, contributes to helping fight global warming? Do you think about that?
Well, the forest is about giving off oxygen. At the end of the day, it's here to be used. I believe that's why we have a renewable resource, and that's the way I see trees. That's the way I see timberlands. One thing that concerns me is, of course, the encroachment that's coming upon timberlands because, we have a population that's expanding. Obviously, I don't think we'll ever live long enough to see somebody build houses. We're here in this swamp. No. But, the thing to remember is that as markets change and as somebody who owns a company or is involved in a company, we have responsibility as stockholders. We have to be financially astute in what we do. And when we're limited to what we can do, say, on this property, that hurts other properties that are in the Piedmont.
Right.
And so by being limited on some of these other properties down here, it'll sometimes force stockholders to want to sell properties to development that are elsewhere. And so there's, again, it goes to that order thing. You can't skip one without it affecting something else.
Yeah.
And so, we as an industry, we have to be very smart in saying, well, we can't just come in here and say we're not going to do X anymore because there is a ramification to that. If I say, well, I'm going to stop all this harvesting in this kind of land, that's going to affect other timberlands.
They're going to have to be harvested more.
They're either going to have to be harvested more, they're going to have to be sold to development. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, there's property taxes to be paid. There's investment money that has to be returned to people, and that's an ongoing issue. So, we have to be smart in what we do so that we're not cutting off our nose to spite our face, right, is what it boils down to.
Last question. When the day comes when you finally hang up your boots, what do you reckon you'll do?
I'll tell you what, for my last birthday, my boys got me a banjo.
Is that right?
Yes.
You ever played it before?
Never played the banjo before. My boys are both very musical, gifted musicians. I've been able to sing with them at times, but they won't let me near an instrument. So they bought me the banjo, I believe, because they wanted the banjo.
Right.
And eventually I'll pass away and they'll get the banjo.
Right.
So I guess, my hope is that somewhere between now and the time I go to my reward, I'll learn to play the banjo enough for at least one song that I can play with my boys before I pass. So if I was able to stop working tomorrow, I win the lottery or something crazy like that, I guess the banjo comes out and I got to start working on the next stage of my life.
Exactly. I have a sense, though, that if you won the lottery, you wouldn't stop working.
I enjoy this stuff too much.
You love it too much.
Yeah. You got to love the swamp to work in the swamp.
Yeah.
That's one thing I have told people over and over again. When you get out of the truck and you got to put on chest waders like I was in yesterday, to wade through a swamp to check stuff and look at beaver damage and that kind of stuff. I mean, you got to love that stuff. That's just not something you decide, well, today I'm going to, go knock a few cottonmouths off the logs and see what it looks like. You got to love it.
You can't grit your teeth about it.
No.
You got to be smiling.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your story with us.
Sure.
I really appreciate it, Brad. And I look forward to coming out here and seeing how this forest goes again and again.
Okay. We'll look forward to you coming.
Good on you. Thanks, mate.
You've been listening to Brad Antill, Forests and Faith. Do listen to the other 10 podcasts in this Enviva Forest Industry People series. I'm Scott Poynton. Thanks for listening.